live from the Coachella Valley. Time for another hour of the desert scene. Art exhibitions to modernism, music festivals to live theater, big screen, little screen, and very little screen. This is the Culture Corner with Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza. Here's Bonnie and Brayan on iHub Radio.
And welcome to the Culture Corner in this beautiful spring weather we're having. And hey, new mask mandate change.
Oh yes, now we can, if you're vaccinated, you can go ahead and go inside a restaurant and let loose for a moment.
I mean, wow, doesn't it seem like forever? And somebody else, I think it was Rachel Maddow last night, said she felt weird. She just felt weird. Because we're so used to having them on now that like walking down the street, walking without it. But I mean, I know there's some controversy though, because people were saying, well, you know, how do you know people are vaccinated? Anyone can say, well, I'm vaccinated. Well, you don't. I mean, that's it's just
true.
one of those things. I think it's going to take a while, but there's still places, airports, transportation, hospitals, and if a business has a sign that says you must wear a mask, you still have to obey their rules.
No, yeah, there's certainly still some. I think at this point, it's not only a thing of social etiquette, but also social health concern. The fact that it's nice to have that feeling of less letting loose for a second, but also, still being.
You still want to be smart and considerate of others. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just like how, you can go to the beach and be in a Speedo, just don't take it off.
and maybe look in the mirror before you go out on the beach in the Speedo. Maybe you shouldn't be wearing it. Just saying.
Or check if it's a nude beach.
Yeah, right.
That's just kidding. That's just a metaphor.
So, Brayan, lots of entertainment news. You wanted to start with the Golden Globes controversy.
So, what I like about doing this show at the end, every Friday, as opposed to like a daily thing, is that we get the whole story in one bunch, because this was a developing story last week. So the Golden Globes, this story begins with Emily in Paris, a show that was on Netflix that was a critical flop. Now, it wasn't the worst show in the world. Now, it was just your average everyday show about a white girl that tries to find love.
Anybody well-known in it?
For the most part, I think there's some well-known people, but for the most part, it's just a lot of like unknowns, like Lily Collins and Ashley Park and people like that. But the show, it was okay. Mm-hmm. But when it got nominated for the Golden Globe, a lot of people were very upset with it. Not just because I May Destroy You, a critically acclaimed show about a black woman who tries to rebuild her life after she gets raped, which was really beloved, and that show was excellent. A lot of people were like, why did Emily in Paris get nominated? But it was also because 30 members of the voting body had flown to Paris, where they spent 2 nights at the Peninsula Paris and were treated to a private lunch that was apparently paid by Paramount Network as a way to
courting favor. Now that's a little tacky.
That is. And with that, it soon led to investigations that found that members of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association were selling tickets to award shows to make some money, and they were receiving gifts from studios and donations to the Golden Globes. And also, they found out that there were no black journalists at the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. And with that being said, they also figured out that nearly a lot of members collected nearly $2 million in payments from groups for being on different committees, and it's just one of those things.
A lot of slimy stuff going on.
Yeah, and the Golden Globes, it was starting to get to a point in February, and when the award ceremony came out, Amy Poehler and Tina Fey made jokes about how, this is one of their things. They said this: everybody's understandably upset at the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and their choices. Look, a lot of flashy garbage got nominated, but that happens, okay? That's like their thing. But a number of black actors and black-led projects were overlooked. And they also made a joke that we all know that award shows are stupid. They're all a scam invented by big red carpet to sell more carpet. Mm-hmm. So there's some good... So, I mean, it got to a point where some people felt that a lot of, I May Destroy You should have gotten some nominations, and then it led to more of an investigation. And the Golden Globes recently this month said that they will try to... They were voted for a proposition. Only 5 people didn't vote for it. But about 75 out of 85 people, so 10 actually, correction, 10 people didn't vote for it. They said that they're going to try to get 20 new members, and they're going to try to increase diversity membership by 50% in the next 18 months. And they even said the focus will be, on diversity, like you said. But soon enough, Netflix pulled out, saying they will not participate or submit awards consideration to them. Time's Up, the CEO for Time's Up, spoke out against it, saying that these reforms were not done with urgency and that they should really take more time to implement these choices and to take accountability, because the fact is, you can't just say in the next 18 months, because the fact is, it's not that easy of a timeline. Amazon soon followed and said they will not submit films for consideration. Warner Media did, and NBC decided they will not air the 2022 Golden Globe Awards. They did say, however, each one of these has stated that they do believe the Golden Globes can reform, but that they need to that they have to divorce themselves in order for them to take the time to do
They got to get rolling, take it seriously now.
Yes.
Like they're just dragging their heels a little bit.
Yeah, and for the most part, they said that they will be hopeful to air it in January 2023, and Tom Cruise returned 3 of his awards. So I'm going to say that it's a lot that the Hollywood Press Association, if they don't take it seriously, I don't know what else they can do.
Yeah, they're getting that's a lot of pushback. That's, so you'd think that they would take it. So we'll see what happens.
And I wanted to ask you, like, do you think in some ways the Academy Awards, that this type of thing, why do you think the Academy Awards didn't get it as hard as the Golden Globes? Like, I think, in my personal opinion, I think that it's because they actually went out of their way to actually make it more diverse and a much more quicker time span.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you have seen, there have been complaints against the Academy Awards for years also for the same thing. But in the last 5 or 10 years, I think now, is it too slow? Yes, it's always too slow. But they, I think, have really moved forward and made concrete efforts to change and be more inclusive and diverse.
No, and I think that when you look at the movies that they nominated last year, you'd ask yourself, it took this long for 2 women to get nominated for Best Director. I
think there were 3 black actors who were nominated. Was it either supporting or best? There were 3 African American actors. I think that's fabulous.
Multiple categories. Yeah. And you saw how different types of movies came about. I think people get this impression that we're arbitrarily asking the Academy Awards to get 1 black person or 1 brown person. I think if you look at the movies that black and brown folks typically make, they're a little bit different in different topics. Like, they tackle race differently, or they might tackle like a singer's life differently. Right. It's because, like, to live as a black and brown person in America or in the world,
it's a different experience. Yeah,
it's a different experience. Yeah. And I know it's good to say we're all the same, and we're all the same, beautiful
to a certain degree.
Yeah. And but like you said, to a certain degree, because we all live different experiences, and that's why movies like Promising Young Woman were also, in my opinion, much more successful than a lot of other movies about revenge, because it was a movie directed by a woman about a woman seeking revenge, and it reads
from the woman's experience. Yes,
and it reads differently than a man writing about that. Because for me, like movies like Joker, which is about a man taking vengeance against society, it's a little different when a woman directs a story about a woman, because like you can see these 2 movies they're similar. They're about people breaking down in society. But one is very angry, and the other one is one of those things where it gives a much more realistic version of it. And the one that's directed by Emerald Fennell, she knows how to like capture how real it is for a woman. I imagine. I'm not a woman, so I imagine that's how it feels when watching that. Or just in general, like I May Destroy You. I saw it. I can't recommend it enough. It's really good, and I think that it's a shame that it didn't get nominated. But it just goes to show that if you don't nominate great art, that there's something wrong with your establishment, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And sooner or later, you're going to get called out on it. Like there's too many people who have certain standards and want to see good theater, good movies, good whatever, and diversity as well. Yeah.
And it seems like the Tony Awards have for the most part, been pretty successful at averting that, because I've noticed that, like when we did in Black History Month, when we talked about the Tony Awards and wins, there are far more black and brown Tony winners than any other
Well, the
category.
theater has always been more diverse than film or film. Always. Theater's always, live theater's always been much more willing to be diverse and inclusive and take risks with alternative casting, all that. Yeah.
And I think one of the things is that they also, in theater, they have people that promote colorblind casting. And I know there's always some criticism about that. Like, for example, there's always going to be minor criticism where it's like maybe a role may not be flattering from a certain perspective for a woman of color to have. Like, maybe they'll make mistakes here and there. But, like, the fact is that I love how Andrew Lloyd Webber, in his case, was like, you know what? I don't care if there's a black Christine or a black Phantom or if
it's a good show and good performances, that's what matters. Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. It's just that very rarely would he cast someone specifically for a race. Like in the case of Evita, well, because she's Latina, there's a strong preference for a Latina woman. Mm-hmm. Now, not so much back then. But but another thing I will say is that in the case, I like to bring up a case study of like Annie, like the Annie musical on Broadway when it was revived had Nell Carter as Mrs. Hannigan, and that was a pretty bold risk to have a black Mrs. Hannigan when the remake to the movie came out, a lot of people in the film industry were very shocked that a black Annie was there. So it kind of shows you the general attitude where nobody said anything about Nell Carter being Mrs. Hannigan on stage. But a young black girl being Annie in film is cause for alarm for some people. So it shows you how the theater world and the film world can learn. Well, one can certainly learn from the other.
Well, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how fast they get their act together.
For me, I would want them to. I just would want them to take the time off to really just consider and
focus on this. This is the issue you should be focusing on right now. Yeah. Yeah,
and also I think another thing is that even though Emily in Paris didn't win, it is sort of interesting that, for me at least, it's so open how they just accepted that trip and everything, and they went to the set and everything. Like, to me, that's a little tacky.
That's like bribery. Hello.
And I wanted to ask you, specifically, if you... Oh, honestly, I almost forgot my question. I think I forgot my question for a second. But I was going to say that overall, I think that it's a pretty good timeline, and I'm kind of glad that all these people took a stand. So I'm curious.
Absolutely.
I'm hoping. So that's the best I could say before we go to commercial. Is I'm hoping that they get their stuff together.
Fingers crossed. All right, we'll be back with more on the Culture Corner in just a moment.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Here are Bonnie and Brayan.
And we're back in the Culture Corner. A little more entertainment news. Okay, Ellen. So apparently she is calling it quits after this season. She says she's calling it quits with her talk show. She says it's because it's not a challenge anymore. And supposedly she says it has nothing to do with all the controversy about a bad toxic work environment, all this other stuff. I find that hard to believe. And I used to like Ellen. I mean, I was really happy when she finally came out of the closet and got a talk show, and she became comfortable in her own skin of who she really was. I thought that was great, and I used to watch a show in the beginning. But I'm just, like I said, more if you have one person saying these things or two different, but if you have 3, 4, 5, multiple both staff members and maybe guests saying this kind of stuff went on, it's hard to believe it's not true.
I agree with you. I think for me, like the Ellen DeGeneres situation, look, for a while there has been speculation about when Ellen was going to leave her show because it had gotten to a point where people noticed that she wasn't into it anymore. Yeah. But for me, I think that her leaving during the 19th season, it makes a lot of sense because you can't recover from this this quickly. I think for me personally, I think it would be very wrong of her to just sort of dismiss it as, well, I didn't know it was a toxic work environment. Well, if people were literally afraid to look at you and it was not just one person but multiple people, then you probably should be careful. And also for me, like, I saw this one guest. Well, it wasn't a guest, but an audience member who, they did this experiment where they put all sorts of free merchandise and everyone was told to take one. And this woman took 2. And I was like, okay, no big whoop, whatever. Yeah. Like, it's free merchandise. Right. What do you expect? And Ellen kind of made a joke and really went
humiliated her.
Yeah. And it got to a point where I was sitting there and I remember I was watching it live with somebody. And I was the only one that wasn't really amused by it. I was like, it's
not funny.
It's not funny to me.
Yeah.
And also the waitress who accused Ellen of being really rude to her.
Got her fired because her nails weren't done or something. I read. Yeah.
And I got to say that, Ellen, it hasn't been a challenge for a while because you get A-list celebrities every week. The reason why it's it should be more of a challenge now because you have all these accusations and you have plummeting ratings. Her ratings have plummeted down.
Yeah.
And this one producer on her show said a former producer said that Ellen DeGeneres can't relate to real people and that she should go to an island with nothing but animals because she can't relate. She relates more to animals than people.
And that is a problem. If you're hosting a talk show with people and you're talking to people, if you're uncomfortable with doing that, then that's probably not the best job for you.
And one of the things that I'm going to be honest, it kind of made me cringe a little bit in my seat was when she tried to passively make the joke of, well, I wanted to end it after 19 because 19 seemed like a good number and the 19th Amendment. And I'm like, please do not bring up the 19th Amendment. Like, that doesn't make sense.
That's a stretch. I mean.
And I was sitting there thinking to myself, it's an end of an era, but it's also one of those lessons that you have to be taught that you'll know that sometimes celebritydom doesn't really make someone better.
A lot of times. Well, somebody. I think this quote I'm going to tell you applies to show business too. I think it was Michelle Obama who said, "The presidency doesn't change who you are; it reveals who you are." Same thing for stardom. Same things for stardom. It reveals who you really are as a person. So if you're a jerk, and people don't really have a nut, and you become a big star, very often you become more openly a jerk. So and I mean, like I said, I really was rooting for Ellen back when she came out of the closet and kind of became comfortable in her own skin and got and all that, and then I thought that was great. And you'd think that going through that kind of personal, emotional, psychological trauma, people shutting you off, would make you more sensitive to other people's feelings and would then prevent you from any kind of toxic work environment. So it's a little surprising to me.
And it's one of those things where Ellen DeGeneres also promotes herself as a kind person.
Yeah.
That's part of her self-image. And for me, it's one of those things where it's great to promote kindness and all that, but I always said to someone who is kind is not necessarily someone who's good. Not necessarily. And I've always said that, for example, like if you're a kind person, a bad person can be kind to you. And I think Ellen DeGeneres is an example of someone that I consider morally questionable, but uses kindness as sort of like a tool in their arsenal. Because like, let's be honest, like outside of that, she can carry an audience and she has the talent to do that. But I think it's also wrong of her to like continue doing a show where there's not only a toxic work environment, but not to fully address it, because people have feelings and we shouldn't. And honestly, like, I know a lot of people come for Barbra Streisand for saying the little people, but at least, I think that Ellen DeGeneres falls into that category. She thinks of these people as little people.
She may not say it in so many words, but it sounds like her behavior, shows that.
And also one of the things is that there is something kind of telling, like, about her relationships in the past, like Anne Heche. Her relationship with Anne Heche
ended very badly.
Yeah. And you can tell that Anne Heche isn't exactly quite happy to receive Ellen DeGeneres as an amicable ex. Like, there have been videos of Anne Heche sort of dismissing the Ellen question. So those are signs. Like, I've always said that we should have listened to Anne Heche a little bit more rather than scrutinize her.
Well, I think it's sad, and I think it's disappointing and sad for Ellen, sad for everybody. Maybe she'll go get her act together.
I hope so. And whatever inner peace she has to find, I hope so.
Hope she finds it, yeah.
And I hope whatever inner peace her guests and her employees have to find, I hope they find it too.
All right, we're going to be back with Deanne LuBell after break.
The curtain rises on local and regional arts and entertainment. From music to theater, films to fine art, it's the Culture Corner. Get connected. Call 760-544-TALK. That's 760-544-8255. Here's Bonnie and Brian on iHub Radio.
And we are back on the Culture Corner, and now we're welcoming a friend of mine, author Deanne LuBell. She's a very talented lady. I've known her through the Women Leaders Forum and Media Mavens and all kinds of women's groups in town. She's written several books. But the reason we're having her on today, it's initially sad, very sad story, but she's taken a personal tragedy and made it into something positive that can help other people. Hi, Deanne. How are you?
Hi, Bonnie. I'm doing just great, thank you.
So we got to start out by telling the story that's just so sad, and I'm looking at the graphic of Amy's Purpose, of your adorable little dog, Amy. So tell us what happened.
My partner and I had moved to the high desert, Yucca Valley, in September of 2019, and we live in kind of a rural area, but thought we had a fairly safe backyard for our dogs. And I think it was probably 2 or 3 months later, actually December 22nd to be exact. Mm-hmm. And before I even go any further with the story, we had been told there were predators and wildlife in the area. Mm-hmm. And so I think at the beginning we were very vigilant and very careful when we let our dogs out. But over time, one becomes a little lackadaisical, and you're not quite as alert or aware as you should be.
Yeah.
And it looks innocent out there, in a broad daylight, and the sun is shining.
Yeah.
And it's a gorgeous Sunday afternoon. And so what I did was, we have an American Bulldog, 75 pounds. Amy weighed probably about 10 pounds, a little terrier rescue, puppy mill rescue. And I let them out back, went to get a cup of tea, turned around to see our cat with his paws on the doors, on the fridge doors, which was very unusual. Her ears were back. I could see the American Bulldog cowering against the other side of the French door. We ran to the door, and just in time to see 3 coyotes tearing little Amy apart.
Oh my God.
It happened within minutes, maybe 2 minutes, 3 at the most. So, of course, she was my soul dog. I've owned a lot of dogs, and I've loved them all dearly. But she was definitely my soul dog. And had quite a little following on her own and a fan club. So many, many people out there love this dog as much as I did, to tell you the truth.
Oh my God. I don't know. Gosh, I don't. So I know that had to take a long time to just process and grieve over. And how soon, I know it takes time, but how soon, and I can't even imagine. I have 2 big dogs. I have a Goldie and a lab rescue, but I can't even imagine. When did you start thinking about turning this into something to help other people?
The next day.
Okay.
No, I really did, Bonnie. I was in shock. I was in grief. I had witnessed this. I witnessed it. It's just, I mean, I still have flashbacks.
Oh, yeah.
To this day. But I thought, oh, no, this can't happen to somebody else. Of the dangers lurking around. We are in their territory.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I do emphasize, it's not the coyotes' fault. They were here first.
Yeah.
And they're found in rural areas, suburbs, small towns, gated golf communities, large cities. Just a few months ago, both a man and a child in separate incidences in the heart of Chicago, in front of a museum, were attacked by a coyote.
Wow.
So they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's not just if you're in a rural area where we were. They're there. They're there, as well as other predators, as mountain lions, bobcats, hawks, owls, rattlesnakes. So I immediately had the mindset, I did not want this to happen to somebody else's beloved pet.
Yeah.
Didn't know where I was going to go with it. And I think probably within a week or so, that between friends and family and myself, we came up with this idea to do a nonprofit. I know, a nonprofit just to make people aware, and the name just fit.
Yeah,
Amy's purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the goal of this program is simply awareness. And there'll be other programs and services and features, but to have a Facebook and website to let people know of sightings, killings, how to safeguard, grief counseling, a place to share personal stories, get advice. So this is where we're headed, and we're in our infant stages. We just launched this within the last few days. So, but COVID was a big delay for us.
Sure, yeah. So what if you? Gosh, it seems so. If you and you're, as you said, it's not just remote rural areas; it's other places too. So if you have. What advice would you give people? I mean, at this point, it almost feels like you can't ever let your dog out in the backyard at all. I mean, what would you tell people?
You cannot let your dogs, I don't care where you live, and I don't care how high your wall, a coyote, for example, and then I'll answer your question directly. But a coyote can scale a 10 to 15 foot wall.
Wow.
With ease. With ease.
Yeah.
A bobcat can leap 25, 30 feet. They can leap from the ground to the roof. So you're looking around and you think, oh, I have a fenced-in yard. I live in a gated community. My dogs will be safe. I can let them out back. And frankly, when I lived in La Quinta in a gated community, I did that all the time.
Yeah.
I never thought twice. I was totally not aware. I think I felt like, okay, let's just keep an eye on them every so often, but they'll be fine in the backyard.
Yeah.
consequently, one thing is if you think you have a fenced-in, walled-in yard, that is not going to keep a predator out. You can get what they called coyote. It's like barbed wire, and it's a roll, and you can put that on top of your wall or your fence. But as far as letting your pets out by themselves, even your big dogs, you're taking a risk.
Yeah.
Because now they are going after not just like little Amy, but they're going after bigger dogs, even small horses. Their food supply. One of the things that have happened in both the high and low desert, and you've probably have heard this, especially in the Palm Springs area, is that the rabbits have been thinned out tremendously because of the disease that they got over the last just 2 years.
Yeah.
So when that happens, that takes away the
their food
coyotes
source,
or other predators. Their food source is gone. So they're going to hunt for something else to take their natural food source place. And
I just want to make sure we get everything in before we run out of time. So real quick, for more information, you can go to www.amyspurpose.net, or the office number is 818-946-8086. And one other thing I noticed in your press release, which I loved, is you're also helping to establish more adequate and affordable 24/7 emergency pet care, because there's not a lot of it in the desert.
It's a crisis.
Yeah.
It's a real serious crisis. Low and high desert. If your animal gets injured or becomes ill after hours or on a weekend, Sunday especially, there's nowhere to really go.
Yeah.
Even your so-called emergency places. I had this experience recently with my American Bulldog. I called, and I'm sorry, we're just booked full. We can't take any more. I called Banning. I called Beaumont. The vet hospitals in those areas. And I've heard so many horror stories where people have had to try to rush their animal to a vet nearby, and they end up having to drive an hour or two just to find a place.
Yeah. That
and
needs to change.
With the population of our low and high desert, it's not acceptable to have this kind of situation with all the people. Practically everyone I know has some kind of pet.
Yeah. I want to get this in, but so what advice would you give people? If you're going to let your pet out in the backyard, go outside with them. I mean, is that the best thing to do at this point?
Yes, especially little ones. You don't let your little dogs out of your sight. These coyotes have become so aggressive that even if you're out walking your dog,
they'll come up and
on
attack.
a leash, they'll snatch the dog.
Yeah.
And if you go to the website, there is a tab that'll lead you to ideas for protection.
Okay.
And so that I think that's the best thing to do is just go to the website. If you have any questions, any suggestions, like we said, we're in our infant stage.
Yeah.
We're open to hear what the public has to say, or what they want, what they need, and don't hesitate to call or go to the site. And just one quick thing, we're also dealing with human predators. We have now it's just alarming how dogs are now being snapped up, especially purebred, to be resold or
for bait for dog fighting. Yeah. Well, Deanne, thank you. My heart goes out to you, and condolences for your loss. I know it's been a couple of years, but God bless you for turning this into something positive to try to help other dogs and other owners in town. And what a great thing to do. I really congratulate you for doing this, and I wish you the best with Amy's Purpose. And I know she's watching down on you and saying thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We're here to make people aware, not fearful, just aware.
All right. Thank you so much, Deanne LuBell and Amy's Purpose. Thank you so much. We'll be back with more in the Culture Corner in just a moment.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Live from the desert cities of Southern California, here's Brayan and Bonnie.
So we got an interesting story that I saw on NBC News that I just thought was one of the most interesting stories I've heard. So, man, it's the story about a woman who rented a VHS tape in 1999, which led to felony charges for a Texas woman. So this woman, a while back ago, this woman, Carol McBride, she was a former resident of Oklahoma, and she figured out that when she was when she changed her driver's license after getting married in Texas in November 2020, she realized that they sent her an email, and the email said that she has an issue in Oklahoma, and that she had this reference number, and they said that there was a felony embezzlement charge because of a videotape that she never returned. Embezzlement? Because
she didn't return a videotape?
And it was in 1999, and she never returned it. And apparently it was a videotape for Sabrina the Teenage Witch from a place in Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma, called Movie Place. Okay. It closed in 2008, and she said she was shocked when she heard about the felony embezzlement, and she thought she was going to have a heart attack, but the case itself got dropped, and luckily it got dropped because there's no former victim, right? Like, there's no actual victim in this case with the store being closed.
Yeah.
And
well, that's crazy.
I mean, there was no malintent in not returning expired rental.
Yeah. But let that be a lesson to all of you who are, renting anything. Make sure you take it back, get it back. Wow, that's crazy.
And she had said she had never seen the show before. And
so she rented and didn't even watch it?
She doesn't even remember watching it. And she said that, wait a minute, but I've never seen this show. And so she said that her and her husband finally checked out the show, and it wasn't her cup of tea. And I was like, I mean, that... she actually said that she for years had been trying to get a job, but she kept getting denied work.
And she didn't know why, and it was because of this?
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
It's a story.
And so she didn't know about it until she tried to change her driver's license?
Yes, because she got married.
Oh my gosh. Wow. You'd think they would have sent her a notices along the way.
And you would almost think that if it was a felony, they would come for her a lot harder.
A felony? I mean, that's just craziness.
Embezzlement.
Yeah, and I don't understand why they came up with embezzlement. I don't know.
The funny thing is that I guess it would count as embezzlement in the sense that, like, I remember I used to go to swap meet in Banning a lot, and there would always be videotapes, and they still have videotapes there, which I'm like, okay, well, let it go. Yeah. And one of them was like a Blockbuster videotape, like when they have the Blockbuster logo on it. Yeah. And my first thought was, that's illegal. Yeah. That's illegal, but I don't care, to be honest with you. It's a video rental, whatever. Yeah. And probably the reason why Blockbuster went down under because of stuff like that. Yeah. But I guess that would count as embezzlement because you're selling it. But I don't know. Like, I think that's a little... That's a little ridiculous.
I don't know. Possession of stolen property or something. I don't know.
And what else we got? We also got Seth Rogen refusing to work with James Franco because of abuse allegations. So James Franco, a while back ago, was accused of sexual assault, sexual harassment and not only by multiple women, and one of them being a minor. And so James Franco basically was,
did he deny it? Did he say anything?
He pretty much denied it and didn't say much. And the allegations themselves were kind of down low, meaning that they happened, but afterwards, like,
kind of faded away.
But his career also went down the drain too. Yeah. So Seth Rogen stated in an interview that he felt that his relationship with Franco was more awkward and a little bit less definable now, that he says that he has no plans to work with Franco in the future, and he doesn't see their working relationship as being something that is at this moment repairable. And the two of them had worked together in movies like Pineapple Express and just a lot of movies at World's End. So to me, this is an excellent example of keeping your home, as the youth would say, keeping your homeboys in check. You know, like and like
I like that. Okay.
But
keep your homeboys in check.
But it is true though.
Yeah.
Like you do, because I feel like a lot of times men will work with other men who have been accused of something bad without critically thinking, you know what?
Does this reflect on me?
Does this? Because it does.
Yeah.
It does.
The company you keep. Yeah.
And I mean, you've worked in show business. Has there ever been a moment where you have met someone that was really nice, but then you figured out that they work a lot with someone that you don't think is a generally good person?
You know, that's so funny. Yeah, yes, and that's a whole. You know, we have to do a whole show on that. But sometimes what happens is my experience with someone might be very different than your experience with that person, and maybe your experience with that person was bad, but maybe they were having a bad day, or it was a bad time in their life, or they've changed, and sometimes it's hard to understand. Well, why? Why do you not like? Well, because. And it's really, and I've had people say that about me. Some people love me, and some people say, well, I worked on, and sometimes it's hard to understand. You're like, really? That sounds like a different person.
Yeah, and I can see why James Franco, Seth Rogen would have a hard time at first trying to not only try to be friends with his friend Franco, because they had worked together since the 90s.
Yeah.
But also, I can't imagine something that serious, you know.
Well, there has to be a line. I mean, and I've had people in my life, in various careers and showbiz, whatever, that there comes a time when it doesn't mean that you have to publicly trash that person. It doesn't mean that you have to send poison pen letters, but you just say, I think I'm just gonna distance myself from this person because I just don't feel comfortable anymore.
And I certainly agree with you on that, because I feel like I've been in a case recently where I had a friend who was accused of something. I'm not going to say what it was, but I actually said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to keep my distance and not take any real sides on this, because I said to myself...
Not sure what the real truth is.
Yeah, because I feel like in my case, it was a little bit more shades of gray, because more so than the Franco, Seth Rogen situation.
Franco's had a bad reputation for a while now.
Yeah, and I've also heard... I mean, we've mentioned a couple of weeks ago that at the Academy Awards, he was pretty harsh on Anne Hathaway, saying, don't you dare come for my comedy, or don't you dare tell me how to be funny. And I think for me, it's like it reflects a lot on a person when you decide to distance yourself from that type of toxicity.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's also reflective of someone when you're accused of something really harsh, but there's behavior that indicates that you don't exactly respect women. So to me, it's like the Franco allegations, I'm more inclined to, I'm going to be honest, to believe them. Yeah. Because there is a behavior of him sort of viewing women a certain way. Because even in his movies, women, the movies that he doesn't produce have great female roles, like women roles, like the Spider-Man movies are freaks and geeks. But the films that he produces, women are mostly objects. And there was one moment where Seth Rogen made a joke that maybe he should be a young girl, so so James Franco would notice. So I think he has, for a while, notice some bad behavior, and it's good that he finally distanced himself. I mean, it's never too late to distance yourself. Yeah,
and good for him. There's got to be a line. We all have to have a line. All right, we'll be back with much more after just a few words on the Culture Corner.